Hello, welcome to this little lecture about parasitic activities in development. There are instructions for this lecture in section 11 of the handout. Here we focus on some simple analytics of it, and you can read more of the examples in the handout. So let's start. We have 3 P's. We have 1P for private businesses, 1P for parasites, and 1P, the third one, that is for profits. So we're going to focus on what we call a common pool. There's a fourth P in a sense. There's a common pool of entrepreneurs, and they can go into either private businesses, that are producers, they are productive and produce something gainful for society, or they can go into parasitic activities, becoming parasites, and they are just a drag on the profits to the private entrepreneurs. And both types of entrepreneurs follow the profit motive, the third P. So we have a diagram here. They're going to illustrate the basic things of this lecture. On this axis we measure alpha, that is the share of entrepreneurs that go into being producers, being productive, gainful activities. The maximum, of course, is 1 on alpha. That means that all entrepreneurs are productive producers. That means also that the share of parasites are equal to 0, because all entrepreneurs in that case are producers, and there are nobody left to be a drag on the productive activities. The opposite is true at 0. In that case, then there are all entrepreneurs are parasites, and there are nobody in productive activities. There are no producers in that case. Maybe around a half would be of some interest. Then you have an equal mix of the two. There are half producers and half parasites, and if the parasites only have capacity to sort of visit one producer at a time, that means that there is one parasite for each producer in that case. If you are here, then there are more in this between a half and 1, then there are more producers than parasites. And the opposite is true here to the left of a half. That means that there are more parasites than producers. Let's start with the profit that we measure up here. We call it pi. The profits, and let's start with the producers. We have what we call joint economies. That means that the profits to a producer increases with the number of other producers. They create a market for each other, meaning that the profitability of being a producer is higher the more other producers there are. In this area here, there are many parasites. So that means that when you expand the number of producers in this area to the left of a half, then the increase in the profitability of each of the entrepreneurs is lower than to the right of a half, because then there are less parasites relative to producers, and you have this curve increasing with a steeper slope. At exactly equal to 1 here, then we have what we call E1. The level of profits are then equal to what is on the vertical axis for E1. And this is basically what we're going to get out of these joint economies, which is important for the reasoning here, that profits to producers are increasing in the number of firms that are producing. So let's now move to the parasites. They basically live of the profits of the producers, but they have a limited capacity to sort of visit producers or distort them or provide services for them, services that by assumption is of no value to them, but they have to pay for them. So for the producers, each parasite is a drag on their profits. But if there is no producers, then of course the profits to a parasite is zero. But it increases if the number of parasites go up, and increases along this red curve here. And it is almost like a straight line up to a half. In this case, then the more firms there are, that means that each parasite can know for sure find a target to exploit, but he only benefits not from new targets like he did in this part of the reasoning. When you come to a half and beyond, then the only gain for him for a higher number of productive enterprises comes from the higher profit of each enterprise. So there's more that he can distort, more that he can get his share of. So in this case, it doesn't increase so much. It's something like this. So now we have the profit opportunities of the parasites, that's the red curve, and the profit opportunities for the producers, that's the blue curve. And you say that both of them have a kink around a half, because then it changes from being too many parasites, so the competition among the parasites, that means that the profits go up for each of them the more producers there are, because that means less competition between the parasites to get a target to exploit. That is in this area here, that's why that is increasing so much. And that is not the case here. Then you only gain, each can then easily find one target to exploit, because there are more targets than there are parasites. So that means that the parasites only go to a certain number of them, but the gain for them along this curve, that's still an increase that stems from the higher profit of each producer, because you are now in a situation with more producers all in all. So that is the basic principle here. We have called what we call E1. There's another interesting area here. Let's call that E2. So we have names of them, and there's an intersection here called E3. So the dynamics of this situation, that is if they are recruited from the common pool, each of them have a profit motive, as I said. That was the third P. That means that if it's more profitable to be a producer than to be a parasite, more entrepreneurs will go into production rather than being a parasite. The converse is true. If the profits of being a parasite is higher than the profits of being a producer, then more of the entrepreneurs will go into production. Then more of the entrepreneurs will go into being a parasite rather than a producer. So let's start to the left here. What is the case here? Well, we see that the profits, the blue curve, for a producer is higher than the profits for an entrepreneur. So some entrepreneurs will start up with production, and they will increase the share of the total entrepreneurs until you're up to E2. Then it's equally profitable. Then there's so many targets around that's equally profitable to be a parasite as to be a producer. If you are to the right of this E2 level, then we see that the profitability of being a parasite, the red curve, is higher than the profitability of being a producer, the blue curve. So in that case, the dynamics must go in the other direction. It's no more profitable to move into parasitic activities. So that means that the share of producers decline. That is true all the way up to this point here. At point E3, we see again that the two profit curves are equal, but to the left of it, it's more profitable to be a parasite than a producer, so then you fall down again. But to the right of E3, it's more profitable to be a producer rather than a parasite. So in that case, you move up, 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 up until you reach the situation with alpha equal to 1, where everybody is every entrepreneur is a producer rather than a parasite. So we have 3 intersection points, but only 2 of them are locally stable. E1 is a good equilibrium with many producers. E2 is a bad equilibrium with many parasites and few producers. But again, nobody has incentives to move to become, even though there are few producers, nobody has incentives to move into production. They are in an equilibrium, but it's equally profitable to be a parasite as to be a productive producer. E3 is the tipping point, the threshold. If you go beyond that, then you move to the good equilibrium, E1. If you go below E3, you move to the bad equilibrium situation, where there are this low level of producers and high number of parasites. So this is basically the dynamics of the situation. Let us now move into to see some the consequences of, for example, a higher productivity. You can think that maybe if you have a higher productivity, the whole problem will disappear. A higher productivity in being a producer. That means that the rich societies should expect to have a better composition of parasites and producers, if at least that is the only change of becoming rich. So we can think we can lift up this curve here. We can lift it up like this, because then the profits to a producer becomes higher. And we can lift it up even more. We can lift it up all the way up to this. Now it is very productive to be a producer. In this case, we see that there's no bad equilibrium in all places with this new big blue curve that I draw again here. Then it's always more profitable to be a producer than to be a parasite. In that case, you would end up in a type 1 E1 equilibrium, the good equilibrium, where there are only producers and no parasites. But this was just assuming that they become more profitable here. They can also what make the producers more profitable can maybe also benefit some of the parasites. So we may have to look a little more closely into it. Let's take a new sheet of paper and look into what else can happen. So we had a situation, to remind you from the beginning, that we have the profits here on the vertical axis, and on the horizontal axis we have the share of productive entrepreneurs. That means the more entrepreneurs we have, the more production we have in society, and the higher is income in society. We had that on a half there was a kink, so we had this curve going like this for the productive enterprises, and it's steeper after a half than before a half. And we had this curve for the parasites that we insisted were something like this. The E1 equilibrium, the good one, that was when you have very high profits in the drawing I just made for you, up here. And we see it's locally stable because the profits to the producers are higher than the profits, the red curve, for the entrepreneurs. If we are in the bad equilibrium, then we are at E2, and in that case it is the same, that the profits are equal for both, but in this case we have a very different composition of entrepreneurs. We have much more parasites and fewer producers. Let's now see the consequences of better law enforcement. Better law enforcement, what would that happen to the profits of the producers, everything else being the same? Well, they can protect themselves a little bit better against the parasites, and the parasites won't get the same high share that they obtained with lower law enforcement than before. So that means that this curve shifts up like this. So it's something like this. Of course, law enforcement, when you have at the zero end here and at the top point here, that doesn't have implications, but of course here there are no parasites, and down here there's basically no parasitic activities because they don't earn anything. So this is what happened to the firm's profit of having better law enforcement. What is happening to the parasitic profits? Well, in that case, that will decline because now they get a lower share of every target they exploit, and so the curves look something like this. So it moves downwards in the diagram. So that means that this, what we call the E3 equilibrium, that moves from here down to this stipulated intersection point, while the E2 intersection moves upwards. The E1 type of equilibria doesn't really change. Let's now focus on this interior equilibrium. And we see that law enforcement improves things. You get more productive entrepreneurs and fewer parasites. You move from E2 here up to this point that I'm pointing at now, to this E2 with a prime on. That means that it is an improvement. More is produced in society, but notice also that what is harmful for the entrepreneurs, that you have bad for the parasites, that is basically beneficial to those who remain parasites. Not all of them remain parasites, those who are parasites here. Some of them go into production, but in the new stable equilibrium, locally stable equilibrium, then it is better in the sense of a higher profit to the parasites. So we can sort of have a slogan for this that's easy to remember. What is harmful for the thief benefits both the producer and the thieves. The thieves that remain thieves or parasites. So that is a good memory here or a good slogan to remember, that that harmful activities for the thieves can improve the situation, but the benefits are both to the thieves and to the producers. So another example that we have in the handout is looking at the consequences of foreign aid. Oh, you see that these sheet of papers that I have here, they are colored because I have such a strong pen and maybe strong arm. So I hope this still fits. So we know we're looking for foreign aid, because that's much discussed, and we're going to distinguish between two cases. One case where you have sort of good institutions. Again, we're going to have alpha here and profits here. We are interested in something that happened around a half. The profits to the enterprises is like this, with a kink, and the profits to the potential parasites, they can be sort of located in the public sector where they are just surplus politicians or bureaucrats that's just a drag on the profits, but they enter into it as long as they can sort of get benefits from that. And one source of benefit maybe is the foreign aid that the country receives, that they can steal from that or be a drag on that. So if this is the case, we are just drawing the same curve as set of curves that we had before. If this is the case that we have basically bad institutions, what does that mean when you pour in foreign aid? Well, in that case, you just lift up the curve for the parasites. So that means if you were here initially, at this we call it E2 equilibrium, we move down to this curve. So more possibilities to sort of drag out money for the parasites, because you have bad institutions. You don't have strict control. The bad institutions have a lot of corruption and things like that. In this case, you move to an inferior situation in spite of the more resources that move in. You get less production because there are less productive entrepreneurs when you move from E2 to the new point E2 with a bar on, with a mark on. So you move from here to here. That means that you have because it's to enter into parasitic activities become more profitable. When this is the case, we have a new slogan actually, that what benefits the thief, the parasites in this case, is harmful for both the producers and the thief. You see that the profits to both of them, even though there are more resources in here to sort of live on, has declined, because you have this movement away from producing yourself and into being more parasites. But again, that was maybe a very pessimistic picture of the consequences of foreign aid. One alternative interpretation of foreign aid, not the only interpretation, but one consequences of foreign aid could be that there are good institutions. You really help producers. They get new technology, better education of the workforce, and so on. If that is the case, it's not the new stipulated curve that with the red color that is true, but the new stipulated curve with the blue color that is true. And it is like the new situation is going to be with a red bold curve and the stipulated blue curve up here. In that case, you move from E1 here, E2 here, and up to a better equilibrium, one with we call it E2 mark in that case. Also, one with more producers, because they are no productive. You replace the foreign aid that sort of made parasitic activities less profitable. And you can, in this case, you see what benefits the producers. Again, benefits the producers and the thieves as well, because there are fewer of them, but each of them obtain a higher profit in the intersection. That is basically due to these joint economies, that when you get more producers, there are more higher profits to obtain from parasitic activities. And it is the same principle that goes again and again in some of these illustrations that I provide. You can also think that foreign aid will sort of lift the producers' curve so much that there's no intersection with the parasitic curves. If the institutions are very good and the foreign aid is very generous, that might be the case. So it really depends. Is foreign aid good for development? Does it lead to more production in the country themselves? It depends on the institutions. It depends on the arrangement in the country. It can go either way, dependent on the quality of institutions and the quality of the setup of the country, the governance of the country more generally. I stop by this. You can see more examples in section 11. I come back with some other things on corruption that are related to this, but not exactly the same. Okay, goodbye for now.